Hello, my beautiful friends. I am Laurel Bleadon-Maffei with Illuminating Souls, welcoming you to this episode of Sleepy Bedtime Blessings, a podcast designed to help you rest, relax, and fall asleep, all while deepening in your connection with your beautiful team of angels who love you so. I am an angelic practitioner, a spiritual teacher, and an encourager of souls. And my intention is to always hold a beautiful, sacred space for you to deepen in your own divine guidance, to know that you are loved, and to help you connect with inspiration and light. I offer one-on-one angel sessions, which take place over the phone. They are 1-hour sessions, and they are just lovely. And if you're ever guided to book one, you can go over to my website, illuminatingsouls.com, and I can typically schedule you in that same week. So I'm not one of these practitioners that has a waiting list of months and months. I'm typically able to schedule you in fairly easily. I also offer soul mentoring, which is a longer process and creates a space over a few months to help you come into a place of growth or transformation. I typically only have a few spots open for mentoring, so if that's something that calls to you, feel free to reach out. And then I also offer wonderful classes to inspire you. I have a new class usually every 6 weeks or so. My classes are small in size, and so you'll get lots of one-on-one conversation and mentoring in my classes as well. So all of this and more will you find on my website, illuminatingsouls.com, and you can also sign up for my mailing list, and then you'll be in the know. I'm so blessed to get to do this work, and I love sharing it with you, so I look forward to hearing from you. And if you are a regular listener and you are enjoying this podcast, I invite you to leave a review on iTunes, share the podcast with a friend, and you can also now subscribe to it on YouTube. I have just started posting the episodes there as well. So lots of ways we can connect, but for now, the angels and I are going to be with you for the next hour or so, and the angels will certainly be with you longer than that, but this episode will be about an hour long, so you will have plenty of time to rest into this beautiful energy the angels are bringing forward for you. If you're using this as a sleep tool, my suggestion is you turn the volume down a bit lower than you would if you were listening to an audiobook. That's what I always do. And then you just listen until you drift off. There is intention to how these episodes are crafted. I purposely speak to you in a low voice, and there are no loud, jarring sounds. I ramble a bit. It's not meant to be an hour-long content that is supposed to keep you riveted. I hope that you drift off at some point. I listen to sleep podcasts every night, including this one, and so I find having an hour of soothing, sweet content really helps me drift off. And I know some of you listen during the day because I get to keep you company, which is a joy as well. So however you are guided to use this podcast, you have my gratitude and my blessing. I almost always record these episodes in the early morning, and so this time of year, even though it is really early, the sun is starting to come up, and so the birds are chirping. So you will hear some ambient bird song happening here. And if it is any noise other than that, I will edit it out. But the birds are very talkative this morning in the trees around our house, which is very sweet. And so they will be participating in this episode as well. So, my friends, I start with the question of how are you? As I record this, it is April, and we are in the eclipse season, and we are approaching Mercury retrograde. And I am not an astrologer. There will be many people out there who are much better versed to speak of this than I am. But what I can share with you is that I find these energies cause me to feel wobbly in terms of my foundation. It can be frustrating because it feels like things aren't moving forward in the way I think they should, and yet new sparks of inspiration are finding me. I just had the most delightful spark of inspiration find me this week, and I'm not going to share with you what it is yet because I'm still dancing with it. One of the things I have found over the years is to not necessarily speak my sparks of inspiration out loud to a wider audience, because then they dissipate somehow. But I wanted to share it with you because it is just so joyful when sparks of inspiration find us. So everything about these experiences delight me. How, on Monday, I had no idea this spark would find me. And by late in the day on Monday, it had come across my consciousness. And I started dancing with it. And I have been giggling about it ever since. And I love how that happens, because it can feel like nothing new is being born. It can feel like there's nothing on the horizon that is going to show up that will be filled with joy and ignite the creative spirit. And then all of a sudden it's there. And it's not because I prayed for it. I mean, maybe I did, but I don't remember consciously doing that. I wasn't searching through piles of books and taking lots of classes to try to get there. It just showed up. It's like, have you ever kept a garden and you have volunteer flowers or plants? Like all of a sudden, there's a bloom in the middle of the garden where you did not intentionally plant it. And life is like that. I know sometimes we really focus on the unexpected challenges, but maybe for this episode we can focus on the unexpected delights. Because those are my favorite kind. That it's just an ordinary day. For me it was an ordinary day. I really didn't have any designs on anything serendipitous happening. And I was in a conversation with a friend and had made a suggestion to her. And all of a sudden I thought, I think that suggestion is for me too. And this sometimes happens for me, where I'm giving a suggestion or guidance or wisdom for a friend, and I recognize very quickly that it is meant for me as well. I think that's one of the side effects of being a channel. I open up for the wisdom to come in, and it often lands for me as well. connecting to our divine guidance is a beautiful thing in that way. And so I've just been in this place of joy and enthusiasm. And those are my favorite things to be in. Those are my favorite experiences. And so I want to share that with you, that I am affirming, I am asking the angels to bring you some experiences that bring you unexpected joy, creative spirit, enthusiasm for something that will light you up. And you know, some of these dances with inspiration are short-lived. Some of them serve as a gateway into something brand new. But even if they only last for an afternoon, aren't those still wonderful? Isn't that still a wonderful place to be? And the thing about these serendipitous experiences is we don't have to take responsibility for creating them. They simply exist. So, my beautiful friend, I invite you to take a deep breath in. And if you're preparing to go to sleep, I invite you to cozy on up and snuggle on in. I love snuggling up in bed at the end of the day. It is one of my happy places. I have many happy places. And my bed, our bed, my husband and I, we share a bed, so our bed at the end of a day is one of my very happy places to be. Just like right now, here in the early morning, listening to the birds, sharing with you is one of my happy places to be. So I invite you to connect to some of your happy places as well. And if you don't know what they are, I will ask the angels to help amplify them for you. So let me call the angels in. I love sharing the ritual with you. So let's take some nice deep breaths in together as we call ourselves forward into the heart of God. And beautiful angels on high, I invite you to join us here. And I ask that you infuse this broadcast with waves of inspiration, waves of delight, waves of lightness, of spirit, of goodness, of well-being. And I ask that you also help clear and lift from us anything that feels burdensome, anything that is heavy, any energy that does not belong to us. Help us clear and rise up into the beautiful energies of divine love, where we can be cleared through the heart of God. So dear ones, just take some nice deep breaths in as the angels bring this beautiful love to you. You know, one of the conversations I have been having with people this week is that in this moment in the world, I think part of what we are seeking to remember is how to be in the world, but not of it. And I know that phrase is common and has many meanings, but what I mean by it in this moment is that there is a lot happening in this world. And I find that much of what is happening here is not in alignment with my core values and my belief systems. And also I have very little influence over it. I can pray, I can vote, I can donate money, I can share my voice. But at the end of the day, I have very little influence over that. And that can be disheartening if I allow myself to focus on that. So instead, I pivot and focus over those experiences where I have some dominion and influence. And there are a multitude of places where that would be true. Right? I have my new creative project over which I have dominion and influence. And when I dance with it, it makes me happy. When I'm in my happiness, I have more resiliency and vitality. And then I get to use my life force in ways that are deeply meaningful to me. So the invitation to you is to make sure you are creating space for yourself to get to use your life force in ways that are deeply meaningful to you, fulfilling, that bring you a sense of vitality and on purposeness. And so take a breath in so that you can sing your song, dance your dance, and shine your light, and get to be you in the beauty of all that you are. Because you are a big, bright soul, my friend. You are filled with wisdom and light and goodness and love. And this world is better because you are here. So I affirm the angels are bringing you your sparks of inspiration. The birds are really singing. Can you hear them? It's such a great soundtrack for what the angels are sharing with us right now. Awaken to your song. Be one of those who sings the day awake and soothes the end of the day into love. Receive the love that is coming to you now. You don't have to do any of the heavy lifting here. Your angels are with you, and they are watching over you, and they are shining the love of God upon you. Allow it to soothe your nervous system, soothe your consciousness, and soothe your beingness. Take a nice deep breath in, allowing your body to relax down into the softness of this love. And just breathe, allowing your body to be soothed and cleared from any stress that might have built up throughout the day or night. Just allowing it to be cleared away, so that in this next breath there is only love for you. Not only is there only love, but there is love for you. For you, you make sure that you drink from the well of love for yourself. And so, my beautiful beloved, you just breathe and relax, and your angels are here to receive your prayers and your intentions and your requests for support. You would just say, "Hey angels, hi, how you doing? Glad you're here." I'm very informal with my angels. And just feel their joy as they say hello back. So you go ahead and rest and drift off if that is what you are guided to do. And while you rest, your angels will be with you. And I'm going to read to you and share some stories with you. So for story time, I have yet another old TV guide issue to share with you. I love making these episodes about TV Guide with you and for you because they seem to help me time travel and reconnect with memories from whenever this issue is from. And this particular issue is from July of 1991. I bought it off of eBay. So let me start with my first reflection, which was when I was contemplating making this episode, I thought, well, that's kind of new, 1991. Only to then do the math in my head and to shockingly find out that was over 30 years ago. How did that happen? How was 1991 over 30 years ago? I apparently have no concept of time anymore, but it was over 30 years ago. At this point in my life, because I like to share with you where I was at this time, because my reflections as I go through TV Guide will be colored by what was happening in my life at that point. So I would be 29 years old. I'm living in Los Angeles. I am working for Pacific Arts Video, which is Michael Nesmith's video distribution company. And if you haven't heard the episode where I share about that job, it's out there. I forget what it is called, but if you can't find it, email me and I'll tell you the episode because I don't want to go look it up right now. But I think I talk about the video industry. And for those of you who do not know, Michael Nesmith was one of the Monkees. If you're outside of the U.S., I don't know that the show was an international success, but the Monkees was a 1960s comedy television show about a band. And Michael was known as Mike back then, and he was the one with the hat. He was a brilliant man and formed a home video distribution company before home video was even really a thing. And I started off working with him as his assistant and then got into marketing. But this episode is not about that. I'm just saying at this point, I'm working for Michael Nesmith at Pacific Arts. I am living in a rent-controlled one-bedroom apartment in West Hollywood, which was a terrific accomplishment because it was not easy to get rent-controlled apartments, and I had gotten one, and it was great. At some point in this vicinity, I either would be breaking up with my boyfriend or I had already broken up with him, so heartbreak was either on the horizon or in my rearview mirror, and that always seems to color things. Okay, and you know what? I had to Google this because it showed up as I was talking about the timing of everything. So I would have just broken up with my boyfriend. And here's how I know. Not because that date lives in infamy within me, but this little People magazine worthy tidbit overlapped with when we broke up. So I broke up with my boyfriend, or he broke up with me, however I want to spin that. Again, I'm 29 years old, so everything is highly dramatic. We broke up around the same time that Julia Roberts and Kiefer Sutherland broke up. Now, you may not even know that they were ever a couple, but back in June of 91, again, I had to go look this up. I don't want you to think that this lives in my brain, but this is the part that lives in my brain. So they break up, and Julia Roberts gets whisked away. This is how People magazine and the National Enquirer all packaged this story. She gets whisked away to a castle in Ireland by Jason Patrick. I don't know how to spell it, how to pronounce his last name. And I am in my little one-bedroom apartment in West Hollywood eating copious amounts of chocolate, a lot of malted milk balls from Gelson's, alone, crying over my breakup. And she gets whisked off to Ireland with this really handsome guy. And all I could think of is, I would feel better about this breakup if some really handsome guy whisked me off to a castle in Ireland to heal. But alas, there was no whisking to Ireland or any other country of interest. There was no handsome guy as my fallback, my backup, right? My backup plan. So I just remember the contrast of that. It was me and a lot of chocolate trying to recover from this breakup that felt very dramatic. And she got to be whisked off to Ireland to be in a castle. I was like, something is not fair about this. But I will be happy to let you know that I did recover from that. And life is good. We are resilient beings. And as you can tell, I now look upon that time of my life with tremendous compassion and humor. But that's what was happening in my life. A little snapshot of the Laurel Bleadon, I was not yet Maffei, Laurel Bleadon snapshot from July of 1991. That is so funny. I did not put two and two together that would have been a month after my breakup. And I would be just face first down in a lot of chocolate. Okay, but what else was happening in 1991? Well, we're not going to go into the politics, but since this is a TV Guide episode, let me share with you what some of the top shows were then. And to me, this was a glorious time of television because of some of my favorite shows were airing back then, including Northern Exposure. Brilliant show. I miss it to this day. I own DVDs of it, but I do not own a DVD player any longer. I know I could get one, but I'm just saying. But I love that show, and I can't believe it is not on any streaming service. LA Law is also airing, and I loved LA Law because of Harry Hamlin and Jimmy Smits. What's not to love? And so I'll share with you what some of the top shows were back then. Well, 60 Minutes, which was always one of the top shows in these kinds of charts. Roseanne was the number 2 show. Murphy Brown, which I loved Murphy Brown. Cheers was definitely in its heyday. Home Improvement. Designing Women. Full House. Murder, She Wrote. And I'm going to skip some of the others because I'm sure they're going to come up when we go through the TV guide. And you know what's interesting is Seinfeld had already been airing for a year or two, but it's not in the top 30 yet. So let's open the pages of TV Guide, shall we? And let's see what memories come up in the Wayback Machine. So this is actually their 2000th anniversary issue of TV Guide. So there's a lot of flashbacking, but I'm going to skip over that part and really just get to what was airing on television right then. But as I flip through to the TV listings, I will share some of the ads with you, especially this one because this tells us what was happening food-wise. It's an ad for fat-free Hostess baked goods. So for those of you outside of the U.S., Hostess makes little snack cakes, Twinkies, Ho-Hos. And so what this tells me is we were fat-free at this point. The key to healthy eating was to have no fat. And I was, in all likelihood, the lifetime dieter that I was all about fat-free everything. But the thing about fat-free is it still had sugar. So this is for an ad for Hostess, introducing Hostess 97% fat-free breakfasts, moist, delicious cinnamon crumb coffee cakes, and sweet apple streusel or blueberry muffins. They're 97% fat-free with fewer calories and no cholesterol. I would imagine I tried them, but I have no memory of that. There's also an ad for Glade plugins, so apparently those had already been invented. I have never in my life owned a Glade anything. I don't like when things smell like things they're not supposed to smell like. So you'll never find a Glade plugin in my home. I guess another thing to squeeze in here was how were we, or how was I, consuming television back then? So I would be working during the daytime. I worked weekdays, like many of us did back then. And so I wasn't a big daytime TV watcher. I did record my soaps. I was an ABC soap girl. So my VCR was recording soaps. And then I would also record my favorite episodes. So Northern Exposure, LA Law. I think 30-something might have been airing at this point as well. So I had a couple of dozen, or if not dozens, of VHS and Betamax tapes, because we had started off as a Betamax family, that were labeled. That would be on a bookshelf somewhere that I would select from. So I would watch live television, but I would also record. So TV Guide always starts on Sunday nights. I probably was not watching much television during the daytime on Sunday. If I was, I might be watching something that was already pre-recorded that I wanted to watch. I was not necessarily beholden to whatever was airing live on television at that point. So this being a Sunday, of course, 60 Minutes is going to be on. But at this point, I'm not watching it. I'm not living at my parents' house. I am living my best life in Los Angeles as a 29-year-old girl, woman, wherever I was on that spectrum, and not watching 60 Minutes. The big thing that is happening this particular Sunday night is CBS is airing The Big Easy, which was a great movie with Dennis Quaid and Ellen Barkin that I loved. Okay, so we've got The Big Easy, and we have some other programs that I don't know what they are, so I'm going to skip over them. If I don't have something interesting to share with you about what is airing, I'm just going to skip over it. It might be interesting to you, but I don't want to just read stuff that I don't have a relationship to, so I'm going to keep going. Oh, it's Saturday night. Did I say the TV Guide started on Sunday? Let me retract that. Apparently it's Saturday night. I was wrong. Look at me thinking I know all about TV Guide. So that would be Saturday night, which in all likelihood means I was out with my friends, because I was a very social person back then, and I would almost never stay home on a Saturday night. So I would not be watching The Big Easy. I would be out somewhere, probably at the Cheesecake Factory with my friends, and we would be waiting 3 hours for a table. But we were young, and that's what we did. On Saturday Night Live, even though I didn't watch it, Delta Burke was hosting, and Chris Isaac was the musical guest. So that would have been good. Now we do get to Sunday. So 60 Minutes is on. And you know what show's on that I loved? Life Goes On. How many of you remember that show? So Becca, played by Kelly Martin, organizes a 60s style protest in support of a record store owner, played by Quincy Jones, arrested for selling allegedly obscene material. I loved that show. Was this the one that had Patti LuPone as the mother? Wait, I'm going to go look that up. Okay, and I can confirm that that was the one that had Patti LuPone as the mother, and also Chad Lowe was in it as Becca's love interest, and he was a young man who had HIV. A really heartbreaking story, but I loved that show. So I would have been watching that or recording it. All right, also on is 21 Jump Street, which was a big deal back then. I don't know if Johnny Depp is still on the show at this point. It doesn't say. And then at 8 o'clock, we have Murder, She Wrote, which I don't know that I've ever seen a full episode of that, but I know a lot of people enjoyed watching that. America's Funniest Home Videos, which I never liked that show. That was not my thing. So I don't know what I would have been watching. There were some movies on which don't sound at all interesting to me. So I'm going to skip through the rest of Sunday because it was a lot of, movies and I didn't really know them. And I'm going to skip through the daytime and early afternoon on Monday because, again, if I was home, it was because I was homesick. I would have been watching my soaps or movies or something like that. I would usually get home from work sometime after 6 o'clock. So it would be enough time for dinner and, I'd watch a little bit of TV, reruns or something, and then wait for prime time to come on. So here's what's airing on prime time on Monday. Evening Shade, which I kind of recall this show, but not really well. But I will tell you what I would be watching because what was airing opposite of that was MacGyver. Now, back then I had a thing for Richard Dean Anderson. I thought he was adorable. I loved him when he played Jeff Weber on General Hospital. How many of you remember that? And then he became MacGyver, who could fix anything with chewing gum and tinfoil. And he had that great hair. Loved MacGyver. So in this episode, while tracking the endangered gray wolf, MacGyver is sidetracked by murderous mobsters, but he gets help from two charitable women named Faith and Hope. Now the thing you gotta know is there would never be any romance. MacGyver never got to have a girlfriend, so we just know that would have been a platonic meeting of two women. And if MacGyver and Evening Shade were not your thing, you could watch a rerun of The Sting, which is a phenomenal movie, of course, with Paul Newman and Robert Redford, playing on one of the other channels. Also airing would be Major Dad, which I don't remember watching, and Degrassi High, which I know some people liked watching, but it was not my thing. At 9 o'clock, Murphy Brown is on. I loved Murphy Brown. So this is a portrait of the artist Eldon, who was the house painter who never left. His work is finally discovered, but Murphy is afraid his success will mean she'll get the brush off. So that's what I would have been watching. And then Designing Women was on. Contemporary art takes on a new hue for amateur painting Julia, played by Dixie Carter, when patrons try to buy her handbag at a gallery opening. And then comes my favorite show of that era. It's still one of my favorite shows, Northern Exposure. It was such a brilliant show. In this episode, after his brother dies, Maurice, played by Barry Corbin, searches for an heir on whom to bestow his fortune, but his choice ends in a father-son squabble. Shelley tags along when Holling and Ed go after Jessie, the elusive brown bear, and Joel is not amused when Maggie takes over his out-of-town child birthing class. I just can't even express to you how much I loved that show. And I typically went to bed after the 10 o'clock shows were over, but in case you were a night owl, on The Tonight Show, Andrew Lloyd Webber and Sarah Brightman and George Foreman join Johnny Carson and Ed McMahon. As far as ads go, there is an insert. It says 49 career opportunities you can train for at home in your spare time. And Sally Struthers is their celebrity spokesperson. This is before the internet. So this is from the International Correspondence Schools, North American Correspondence Schools in Scranton, Pennsylvania. And you could learn from home how to do things like wildlife forestry conservation, secretary, police sciences, art. I don't know what that one would have been. Bookkeeping, interior decorating, computer graphics designer, child daycare. There were a whole bunch of things that you could have trained on. Okay, we get to Tuesday prime time. Now, 30-something will air in the 10 o'clock hour. I loved 30-something. So I basically was just killing time until 10 o'clock. So Rescue 911, I don't remember that very well. Matlock, didn't watch that. That was Andy Griffith as a detective. Who's the Boss was on, which I know I watched it, but I didn't love it. But in case you are a Who's the Boss fan, Tony is stung when Mona subs for his 7th grade science class and turns his lesson on bugs into a tutorial on the birds and the bees. There's a show called Davis Rules that I don't remember at all. And then at 9 o'clock, In the Heat of the Night is on, which I did not watch. But Roseanne is on, which I probably was watching. So Dan, played by John Goodman, brilliantly, revises his will after his life flashes before him in an accident at a portable construction site toilet. Okay, well, just even that summary sounds funny to me. So I would have been watching that, I'm sure. At 9:30, Coach is on, which I remember enjoying that show when Elaine sets out to net famous basketball coach, a jealous Hayden, played brilliantly by Craig T. Nelson, puts a play into motion to make him pass up the job. And then we get to 10 o'clock when 30-something is on. But you know what else is on? The show that has been on forever, Law and Order, which I was not watching at that point. I was definitely a 30-something girl. So I'm going to read to you about 30-something. Again, why this show is not available on one of the streaming services, I do not know, because it was so good. The usual suspects gather for Auld Lang Syne at the Stedman homestead, but Hope, played by Mel Harris, can't forget an old acquaintance whose death has brought him to mind. That was really a beautiful show. If you're not interested in Law and Order or 30-something, Highway to Heaven is airing, as well as Star Trek The Next Generation, and a rerun of Hill Street Blues, another really good show. On The Tonight Show, the scheduled guest host is Jay Leno. The guests are going to be Cher and Charlie Sheen. We are now over to Wednesday prime time. We've got Police Squad with Leslie Nielsen, which I know many people love that humor. It was not my thing. There's also Unsolved Mysteries. Again, not my thing. I don't know what I was watching on Wednesdays. And The Wonder Years, which was a charming show, but not my thing. But I'll read to you the summary of Wonder Years in case you loved that show. Kevin is the epitome of cool at school, but the times they are a-changin', and his mom, played by Allie Mills, is looking beyond her housewifely duties into working at his school. All right, at 8:30, Growing Pains is on. I did watch that show. I didn't love it, but I watched it. It was a good time filler, right? Paradise isn't all it's cracked up to be for Maggie, played by Joanna Kearns, who's whisked away by Jason for the chance to finally grieve over her father while the kids take charge at home. I would have probably watched that. Okay, now we have really classic bad television. I bring to you at the 9 o'clock hour, Circus of the Stars. How many of you ever watched one of those, or Battle of the Network Stars, or something like this? So, Circus of the Stars. It's a 2-hour extravaganza of fun. But it's from 1990, so it is a rerun. Whoopi Goldberg, Robert Urich, Joan Van Ark, and Richard Crenna are the ringmasters for the 15th annual edition. Featured animal trainers David Soul, who played Hutch on Starsky and Hutch, Morgan Brittany, I don't remember who she is, and Dick Van Patten, who was the father on 8 is Enough. And then there's some trapezists and aerialists, and Lisa Rinna is one of the aerialists. And Lisa Rinna at that point would be famous from her role as Billy on Days of Our Lives. She had not yet hit the status of Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. Then airing opposite that is Night Court, which is a great show. So Dan, played by John Larroquette, suffers insomnia, hallucinations, and a guilty conscience over misuse of funds for the Phil Foundation. Meanwhile, a toupee gives Bull a swelled head. Also airing is Doogie Howser, which I didn't watch. But Dr. J inspires Dr. Doogie when Eastman doctors face fierce competitors at a rival hospital for the league basketball championship. Perhaps you were a Doogie Howser fan, but I don't know, it wasn't my thing. At 9:30, Seinfeld is on. Now, I don't know if I'm watching Seinfeld at this point. I know I became a fan later on. But this one is, it's just a joke, but maybe, just maybe, it's more when Jerry's unwitting remark precedes a tragedy. Don't know what that tragedy was, but I'm sure I have seen that episode 100 times and just can't think of it right now. And then at the 10 o'clock hour, we have Quantum Leap, which I seem to recall I unwittingly watched it just because there was nothing else on, but I wasn't a huge fan. But here's the synopsis. It's a fine trick when Sam, played by Scott Bakula, leaps into a pimp. Pimps were big stories back then, for some reason, running a New Orleans bordello. And he's called on to save one of the women from an unseemly demise. Yeah, we would just skip over that one. And let's see. Johnny Carson has Mel Torme, Michael J. Fox, and Johnny is at the desk for this episode. We'll skip on over to Thursday night prime time. Something called Top Cops. But The Cosby Show is airing. It's not the number one show at this point, but it's still, I don't know if it's in its early days or its later days. So in this episode, Cliff and his father and their friends spent a day batting around stories about the old Negro League and the relative merits of baseball versus cricket. And then there's a show called Gabriel's Fire that I don't remember. Yeah, I don't remember a lot of these shows. But Cheers is on. So in this episode, Sam, played of course by Ted Danson, is where he wants to be on Valentine's Day, flat on his back. But it's because he fell down some stairs before his 20th annual tryst with the same woman. I guess played by Barbara Feldon, who was on Get Smart, right? Okay, well, I think that's right. Maybe. I'm not going to look it up, though. Sometimes I decide, should I look that up or not? But I won't look that one up. Also playing is Father Dowling, the Father Dowling Mysteries, which I didn't watch. But Tom Bosley, who was the dad from Happy Days, plays Father Dowling. Beverly Hills 90210. Ooh, I might have been watching that. I was definitely an early Beverly Hills 90210 fan. But again, I had a VCR, so I may have been recording one and watching the other. So in this episode, Brenda burns naturally, but Brandon and friends are in hot water when their after-hours poker game at the beach club is followed by a burglary. Loved that show. Okay, and LA Law. Okay, I lived for LA Law. I loved that show. I wish that would be on some streaming service somewhere because I would watch it for sure. So in this episode, a soldier faces a military court for disobeying orders to shoot civilians. CJ represents a home buyer who claims her house is haunted. Brackman flexes his muscles as a senior partner, and personality differences make for professional division between Becker and Roxanne. They do not mention Harry Hamlin or Jimmy Smits in this episode. I don't know if they were still on with the cast, but I would have still watched it. And then that brings us to Friday night prime time. As I recall, Friday nights were pretty sparse when it came to shows that I wanted to watch, and I almost always was out with my friends. It looks like Full House is on, and I did see some episodes of that back in the day. In this one, it's Hooray for Hollywood, and Joey, who lands in a part in a TV sitcom starring Frankie Avalon and Annette Funicello. I don't know that I would have been home to watch that. And I just have to say, it doesn't surprise me that I have no relationship to any of the Friday shows because I was rarely home on a Friday night. I definitely lived by the, 20-something belief that you were never home on a Friday or Saturday night. I was living a very social life back then. You know what I was looking for, but I don't think that they have it, was the soaps, the soap summaries for the week. I thought at some point TV Guide had soap summaries in here. So I don't know what was happening in 1991 when it came to soaps. But would you like to do a few of the questions from the TV Guide crossword puzzle? This was always my favorite crossword puzzle to do because I could actually do it. Versus like the New York Times crossword puzzle, which was just forget about it. I never had the gift for that. But I loved the TV Guide crossword puzzle because it made me feel smart. So let's do this together. We're not going to do the whole thing, just a few. And I think you'll get this one. So one across. A hangout for Norm and Cliff. So, if you don't know what that one is, just imagine for a moment you hear a bunch of voices. Norm. And it's 1991. Cheers. It's Cheers. That's the first answer. Let's see. Okay, I'm going to skip the ones I don't like. Okay, number 16 across. You may only get this one if you've listened to my other TV Guide episodes. Medical Center star. Let me see if I'm right about this. Chad Everett, who I thought was so handsome growing up. So that would be Everett. Let's see what other ones. Oh, this one you'll get for sure. 27 across. Monty Python and the Holy Blank. Say it together. Grail and the Holy Grail. Ooh, I love this one. Okay, hang on. I'm just going to affirm that this is the right answer. 29, Remington Steele Star. Now, something you will not know about me yet because we have not come to this part of TV history. I was a huge huge, capital Huge, Remington Steele fan because of Pierce Brosnan. Let me just share with you the first time I ever knew who Pierce Brosnan was. There was a mini-series made called Manions of America with Kate Mulgrew, who had played Mary Ryan on my soap, Ryan's Hope. So that's why I was paying attention. But in the promo for Manions of America, Kate Mulgrew's character is crying out to this man on a ship who is dressed in like this white linen, like pirate shirt finery and tight pants and boots, like he's a swashbuckler. I don't even know what he was. This was just a commercial. And Kate Mulgrew goes, "Rory." And there is my first ever glimpse of Pierce Brosnan, dressed in this white rippling shirt, looking very brooding, right? A great brooding Pierce Brosnan, looking out at Kate Mulgrew as she screams for him, "Rory." I was in love with him. I didn't even know anything about him, but I thought, he is the handsomest, cutest man I've ever seen. So I then became an enormous Remington Steele fan. So, anyways, a little mini story for you as we go through the TV guide. Let's see what else I can find. So Northern Exposure's doctors. I don't know what the answer is, but that would be Dr. Joel, played by Rob Morrow. Spencer for blank, that would be Spencer for Hire, which was a Robert Urich TV show. I don't know why. I get so happy when I know these answers. And then at the end of the TV guide, they have our horoscope, which I don't know if I should read, but I guess I can read mine and see if that would match with where I was, what I was going through at the time. The full moon in Aquarius still seems to be putting you through your paces at work, as well as putting one emotional or family tie to the test. Therefore, continue to keep your distance and refuse to allow others' unkind remarks to undermine what has been established over the years. Well, that's just good advice no matter what. Right? Just good advice. And so, my friends, that brings us to the end of this TV guide and a little snippet of life from July of 1991. When some of my favorite shows were airing, Northern Exposure, LA Law, and 30-something. I loved those shows. And I will say, even though that month was probably a hard month for me in my life, life would get much better. And I believe we can send healing light through all dimensions of time. So how about we send collective healing to all of our experiences from that dimension of time, through time and space. And take a deep breath in and breathe in the love and the joy that is present for us as we wrap up this episode. And there will be more TV guide episodes in your future because I have ordered another few issues from eBay, my best friend. So, I love you very much. I wish you the sweetest of dreams. And I look forward to connecting with you again soon. So thank you and blessings to you.